Hi, salutations. There is a lot to cover in this episode. That's the preliminaries over, so let's crack on. Age 14 or 15, I had a summer job in a factory down the country. 3 shifts, 11 to 7, 3 to 11, and 7 to 3. I was only small at the time. I hadn't gone through the teenage growth spurt yet. The overalls were female sizes, with the sleeves and legs tucked inwards and stitched to fit. 2 sets, changed and laundered once a week, plus 2 cloth caps and a pair of woman's welly boots with steel toe caps. Most weekends included working overtime, as the campaign was in full swing. But there was one weekend available, probably scheduled for the August bank holiday. I was going home for the weekend. I headed off in the morning to hitchhike to Dublin. Eventually I got a lift, an old guy in an old car driving very slowly. I could see him approaching for ages. He was a nuisance to other traffic, as he drove way below the speed limit. But beggars could not be choosers. He was going to Cork City, and I could take a lift as far as the roundabout where I would turn off for the Dublin road. He explained that he liked to take his time. He didn't see the point of going fast. People were in too much of a rush these days. He asked me if I had ever gone greyhound racing. He told me I would really enjoy it. It was great sport, and I could make some money betting on the dogs. I was conscious of how slowly he drove, other cars beeping at him to get off the road, but he seemed oblivious to it. After a number of miles, he pulled into a lay-by. There was a marsh over the wall at my side. He said to me, "It is nice to have a rest, a chance for a breather before continuing." He switched off the engine. He said he had something that I may find very interesting. He exclaimed that he had a real passion for photography. He pulled out a little booklet from under the dashboard.
"Let me move over a bit closer to you, so as we can both look at this together," he said, as he wedged over towards me and placed the booklet on my lap. Tricks, it was called. Trix. He slowly turned the pages. Glossy, black and white, pornographic photos. He settled on a girl, full frontal, naked on a bed. "Can you appreciate how beautiful she is? See the exquisite curvature and perfection of her body."
He traced his fingers slowly along each curve of her body. My gaze, then and now, is drawn towards a person's eyes. I said I didn't know her. I said he could just as easily have been asking me to be in awe about the sleekness of a racehorse photo. Nothing to do with my life. I looked out the window across the estuary to the far bank. He laughed aloud, said I was a strange one, and cupped my knee in his hand, squeezing and rocking it from side to side. Then he outstretched his index and middle finger and started slowly working them up to my inner thigh and my crotch. His mind was focused on his fingers, but I pretended not to notice. The best laid schemes of mice and men. I knew nothing of Robert Burns then, or even Steinbeck. However, I did have an intuition into how selfish, small-minded people would connive and contrive to take advantage of others when they found leverage. We are conditioned to regard this as human nature, though in truth it is conditioned inhuman nature. I had no desire to be a victim of this guy or to victimize him. He was sick. The road was too fast at this point to easily get another lift from here, and it was a long way to walk to my turn-off. I looked at my watch. It was 10 a.m. I told him I needed to move on. There was a train from Cork to Dublin at 12 o'clock, so if I get to the Dublin road, I could hitch till 11. If I didn't get a lift by then, it would take an hour to walk to the train station and get a ticket. I asked him about the greyhound racing. We made a date for 8 p.m. the following Thursday, 20 miles in the opposite direction from where I started out. He was offering to pay my entrance fee and give me 20 quid to bet on the dogs, his treat. I had no intention of turning up, but felt I needed to throw this dog a bone. He was enthused and drove me to the roundabout. You may wonder, as I do, why I bother to relate this tale. An hour in the life of a kid nearly 50 years ago. Kids, women, the poor, the underprivileged, the old. There is always an underdog to be taken advantage of by some self-serving wretch in our dog-eat-dog world, while presidents and statesmen praise themselves, proclaiming these as the greatest times for them and their ilk. Normally, if someone stops to offer me a lift, I would not accept it unless they were going all or most of the way to Dublin. In those days it was a long road, slowing with each town. You had to put your foot down on the open road to make up lost time. With this old perv hovering about, I thought it better to take the first lift out of there. Just 3 or 4 towns up the road. I was dropped in a town, walked to the north exit, and was hitching for hours before getting a lift. A fast spot where I had got stuck before. Eventually I got a lift just to the next town. A man in a large black Mercedes. He said he was driving in the other direction to a dinner in the town's hotel and had seen me hitchhiking. He said he had dinner, then brandies and a cigar, made a speech, then a few pints in the bar, and was heading home. He was surprised to see me still at the same spot and figured he had better drive me on to a better spot. He drove quite slowly and was not a danger other than being rear-ended. I doubted if he would have been capable of walking in a straight line. He explained that he was a politician for the Fianna Out party. I asked him, what was the difference between Fianna Us and Fianna Them? I stood corrected. It was Fianna In and Fianna Out. Fianna, to my knowledge, is the Irish word for the men of. I could check, but I'm not bothered. You could check if you were interested. He explained, as a young man entering politics, he had to choose which party to join, and chose the one that was of most advantage to him and his career. He chose Fianna Out because it was far easier and you still got paid. Being a backbencher and not having to be answerable or blamed for the mess suited him. Even if Fianna Out got in, he would not like to be a minister. I was surprised at this guy's candour, which may have been socially lubricated from the drink. Later in life, I would notice from the body language on talk shows or the like, neither side treated the other as competitors do. Both sides were Fianna Us, and uncertain members of the public, or those rare journalists who challenged them, were them. They often use that passive-aggressive trick of calling them by name, as if to imply, we know who you are, you have been identified, persist at your peril. It was well after dark when I eventually got home that day. It's a strange world, and not particularly in a good way. A Bronze Age, an Iron Age, an Industrial Age, an Electrical Age, fossil fuel, flying machines, a nuclear age, the space race, the electronic age, the digital age, computers, the internet, AI, drones, surveillance and control. People no longer need to be herded in cattle trucks. Their lives can be controlled by faceless people at a computer, who themselves are being controlled to accept their role in the grand scheme forward. To think we, as a species, are still, as yet, living somewhere in the latter half of the Middle Ages. This is how the world of now will be viewed by future historians. should they ever be born. The odds are not in their favour. We still have monarchies, dictatorships, and feudalism is still embedded in more recent political systems. Democracy and communism, by definition, are two political systems with the potential of allowing people to have comfortable, happy, and fearless lives, providing appropriate safeguards where enshrined. In practice, neither of these systems has ever worked as yet. A capitalist system coupled with a government with a capitalistic mindset at every level would produce a system only fit for parasites and hyenas, not humans. Political families abound. Voting as your father or community does is not democracy. Political parties / clubs enduring beyond a single term of government is not very democratic. A lifetime career as a politician is not democracy. If someone is voted out, every bill or piece of legislation they enacted should have to be ratified by their successor, else automatically voided. There needs to be proper safeguards. If those who sup from the state's table at all levels have a let-them-eat-cake attitude towards others, then the system is not inclusive, thus broken. If people are nervous about signing up to a tracing app to protect their lives because they are worried that states may abuse it in the future, that is another indicator. When a member of a government puts on a balaclava and helmet, hiding his face, and joins the police for a day's sport, cracking heads, what does that say? Psychopaths and sociopaths are human too? I suppose they are, as are paedophiles. But would you let one work in a kindergarten, knowingly? Though I suppose the state here did employ them in children's homes and schools until recently. The less people know, the more they think they know everything. With ignorance comes confidence. With political families, the less you know, you need to know. It's a symbiotic relationship with your officials. Do their PR, firefighting, and they won't stab you in the back. After all, you won the popularity contest. What else can you do? Traditionally, the first order of business of a new government is to give themselves a pay rise. Civil servants love this, knowing their pay will also increase due to benchmarking. In addition, state bodies seem to take turns to drag out some lowly paid cleaner or tea lady who does for them, militantly claiming how disgusting it is that they don't have enough to make ends meet, while ensuring they never will. Again benchmarking, and they must also have more. Was it Costa Rica, Puerto Rico? No, America. Before the end of the Cold War and glasnost, the majority of American children didn't believe they would ever reach adulthood, as they expected to die in a nuclear war. Leaders seem to feel that chaos and fear will secure their position, else a juicy orange carrot for the people to follow and endow their minions with sticks to herd the strays. I took a look recently at the fairy tale The Emperor's New Clothes. No doubt we all know the story, but whom is Andersen poking fun at? Is it the vain ruler who likes to dress to impress? His sycophantic ministers and minions who lie to protect their positions? The two swindlers who can spot his weakness? The masses who line the streets applauding his magnificence, deceiving each other to perpetuate this lie as the ruler prostrates himself stark naked with his chamberlains behind him, pretending to be holding up his invisible train? No doubt some in the crowd may have cautiously whispered to another that this was all a big fake lie. They would have been shot down, accused of being stupid or worse, damaged, and branded of paying too much attention to conspiracy theories. I think Anderson was poking fun at us all. You, me, and everyone else. Apart from the natural innocence and honesty of youth, before we became corrupted by this world. Halfway through the parade, probably about half an hour in, a turn in the road, a brief pause of stunned silence before the clapping would begin again, as his subjects each suppressed their disbelief before participating in the group think. During this silence, a spunky little kid called Greta exclaimed,
"Can you not all see? He is naked."
The Emperor glared intimidatingly with fury in his eyes. "Someone shut that little girl up," he said. Now Greta, who had no concept of how dangerous an overweight despot with no underpants could be, retorted,
"If it was not for the global warming, now you would be freezing. You're nuts."
Before the Emperor could react, some smart aleck at the back of the crowd, hidden from view, shouted aloud, "Hail Scrotum Maximus!" The crowd laughed, murmured, and more chants of "Hail Scrotum Maximus!" were heard from people unseen. But our ruler had been grounded in the qualities of leadership. Never lose face or admit to mistakes. Better to lead your country to destruction than to concede defeat. He had another excruciating half-hour processing through the streets, still with the chamberlains behind, supporting a pretendy train, aware there were people scurrying along the back of the crowd to egg on the chanting and the jeers. He resented that some of his ministers didn't gather around him to shield his view. But they all knew their place and trailed behind, eyes forward, maintaining some dignity to the spectacle. As I said, Anderson was taking a poke at us. Nobody at that time had heard of the Solomon Ash compliance experiment, and even if they had, it would hardly have made any difference. So I think I will declare myself as a king. I have a crown, a writing instrument to sign decrees. So suck it up, guys. I am the self-appointed King of Fools.
"But you must listen to me, people. The king has no face. He is a faceless ruler, and that should not be allowed."